Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, the chat room is open, and that is the only social media out there worth actually socializing in. That's at crusadechannel.com/chat. Please, wherever you find Joe and I on social media, Facebook, YouTube, particularly if you don't mind, Frontline TV on YouTube. That's the station that Joe and I are primarily trying to build up with our producer in Canada for our social media. Frontline TV. You'll find that on YouTube. Please like the videos, subscribe, share them onto Facebook. Do whatever you have to do to help us out. You know the drill. You know the drill. The social media is not going to help us. Social media is not going to help anybody who talks like us. Okay. So what they do is they just kind of shadow ban you. But the way we could spread the word is that if you like a particular commentary show like ours or whatever the case would be on social media, share it. Share it with your friends. Share it on your Facebook page. This way, you don't have to worry about YouTube's algorithm or whatever the case might be. We would encourage you to do so. Now, this has been an interesting week over this last week. Okay. And last Tuesday, there was an election. Okay. Now, some people are going to sit there and say, oh, here they go. They're going to talk about politics. Yeah, but we're going to tie that in, as we always do, to what our responsibility is in all of this. It was a big day, Joe Resinello. Okay.
Oh, no
I don't
doubt.
care. I don't care what anybody says. I'm trying to be a little bit cautious. Virginia, it was a big day for that state. We're going to talk a little bit about New Jersey, too. But the thing is this, what it's an indicator of, and this is the crux of our conversation and where we're going to go, is that there is a new right. Whether the Republicans and yes, the William F. Buckley conservatives, Reagan coalition people, unless they want to acknowledge it, okay, there is a new right. And the new right doesn't exactly resemble the old right. And there are differences. There are some very stark differences. And we need to talk about what's going to happen when that new right regains power. It's going to happen in 2022. There's no amount of hooky-dook nonsense, okay? Joe, I don't think we'll get taken down or anything like that if we say the word hooky-dook nonsense in relation to our politics. That might be, our politics in America. But, there might not be an amount of hooky-dook nonsense that's going to help Pelosi and the Democrats retain the House. In fact, not only will they not retain the House, they're going to get their butts kicked. Okay. It really is that simple. They have a 7-seat majority, 6-seat majority. They're toast. And let me tell you something. The Senate, they're absent the hooky dook nonsense. The Senate is going to get well handed over to the Republicans. So their power is coming to an end. But here's the question. Okay. What are you going to do with it? I've said to Joe Resinello on this show all the time. In fact, Joe, over the weekend, I was watching The Untouchables, and I was reminded of it when Sean Connery's all bloody. He's laying there and he grabs Kevin Costner and he says, "What are you prepared to do?" What are you prepared to do? And this new right, let me tell you something, Joe. If they don't listen to what we have to say, I say us as primarily as Catholics, but all people of goodwill will, okay, who agree with us on many of these things that the Reagan coalition Democrats and conservatives might not agree with us on everything, unless they get it through their head, this is a new right. Well, then they're going to be in trouble too, okay? Because you're gonna prevent, because I'm not gonna go out and vote for any Mitt Romney types, okay? Unless I have to. In the case of our recent election last week, I went out, I voted against Murphy, okay? Because that guy's just flat out evil and he looks like a Martian. Just throwing that out there. All right. So I did go out and I voted for Chitterelli. I met the guy at the feast here in Bergen County. I kind of liked him. Not my cup of tea as Republicans are concerned, but at the end of the day, he sounds a whole lot more conservative than the Mitt Romneys and the Liz Cheneys and people like that. So the question again, Joe Resinello, is this, because Republicans need to see the handwriting on the wall. You got a truck driver in New Jersey. He basically has right now, as of today, or as of yesterday, Joe, over the weekend, as of this weekend, this guy the Associated Press has called that election for him. He beat the most powerful Democrat in the state. Okay. Sweeney's arguably the most powerful Democrat in New Jersey, not Phil Murphy. This guy's a truck driver, spent $150 and he won. And now you got Sweeney all of a sudden is finding 12,000 votes that need to be quote unquote counted. But anyway, I'm gonna throw it over to you, Joe, because I think it's good thing that happened last Tuesday, but I think there is a warning for Republicans. We are the new right coalition. Okay. Largely based on a lot of the things Trump stood for. Not everything that we want, but a lot of what we want. And what are you going to do with those with it the next time you earn power? That's the question. That's the question, Joe.
Well, Joe did a very good job in talking about the stories we're going to go into the breach on. Obviously, as Catholic men, we always try to link that to our, role in society. And we looked into something that Paul VI wrote in 1964, Lumen Gentium. It's basically the dogmatic constitution of the church. This is what he had to say. I think it's very appropriate, and I think it ties in very well with what Joe was saying. What are we going to do about it when we do get power back? This is what Paul VI had to say. He said, the laity, by their very vocation, seek the kingdom of God by engaging in temporal affairs and by ordering them according to the plan of God. They live in the world, that is, in each and in all of the secular professions and occupations. They live in ordinary circumstances of family and social life, from which the very web of their existence is woven. They are called there by God, that by exercising their proper function and led by the spirit of the gospel, they may work for the sanctification of the world from within as leaven. Let me read that again. They work from the sanctification of the world from within as leaven. That's why as Catholics, we're in the world, but we're not of the world. But it's important that we're in the world. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to do the work of God. We do the work of a priest in an office building, in a factory, in a truck, in a UPS store, wherever you are. You know what I'm saying? And that includes voting. That also includes, to be honest with you, living your faith in the public square. This past weekend was the first Saturday. Joe and I did another rosary rally. There are a number of them actually going on throughout the United States. That's a good thing. This is what we're called to do. Every baptized Catholic, we're supposed to be leaven in the world. And like Joe said, okay, so the conservatives potentially get power back. What are you going to do about it? Like, right. What are you, all the Catholics out there, going to do about it? People just sit on their hands. It is actually sad. It's actually so sad when you look at what's going on, especially in classrooms, in public education. Most people can't afford private education. And frankly, the model that most people buy into, particularly in New Jersey, I can't speak for the rest of the country, they buy, because New Jersey has, quote unquote, pretty good public schools. What I mean by that, not, what they're teaching, based solely on test scores. The test scores in New Jersey are very high. And people buy into that because they're not looking to build saints. Let's be honest. They're looking for kids to go to Ivy League schools. And that's what the name of the game is. So people buy into those communities. That's the model. And they pay a heck of a lot of money in taxes, property taxes, because of it. Listen, look at what's happening. What they're teaching your kids. Right. We saw what happened in Virginia, Joe. A girl got raped, violently raped, and they tried to cover it up. The kid did it twice.
And the father got arrested. The father of the girl who got brutalized gets arrested. McAuliffe turns around and says, well, you really shouldn't have a say in what books are in the public school. And Merrick Garland tells the FBI, you really need to investigate things like this. I would punch the FBI agent right in the face. I don't care how that sounds. I'll get arrested, shot. I don't care. You're going to come in and arrest me for yelling at a superintendent of a school board when my daughter was raped and they covered it up, and you're going to come in and you're going to accuse me of harassment? They should be harassed. I don't care what Merrick Garland says.
I think the parents have spoken, and that's like one of the stories that we're going to talk about. It's the parents. You see, this is the loser, and this is what they don't get because they're ideologues. They're ideologues. An issue like children is apolitical. It's an apolitical issue.
Joe, let me cut you off right there because I think it's very important because we were just started out talking about elections. I know you pivoted to Virginia, but to back up your point, I want to make sure everybody is aware of this. Okay, Joe and I suffer under no illusion that Jack Ciattarelli is let's say as conservative as we are. Okay, we're not pretending here. But I'll tell you what, when I ran into him, Joe, and this speaks to what you're talking about you've said it now for at least a couple of years, the longest we've been on the air, okay, on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online, is that these are loser issues for them. Ciattarelli told me when I ran into him, he said to me, he goes, I brought up the transgenderism for 5-year-olds in the classroom. I brought that up. I brought that into this campaign. But here's the reason why I bring that up. It goes to show you normal Republicans in New Jersey, and this goes back to Rachel Bova's article in the Federalist, normal Republicans who run for governor in New Jersey, they want to talk about taxes, which are important. Okay. They want to talk about the hostile business environment in New Jersey, which is very important. But that's not all that people care about. In fact, I would put that, according to what we're talking about tonight, and the reason why I brought up Ciattarelli, that's actually second on the list. Their kids come first.
Well, again, kids, it's an apolitical issue. You could have a Democrat who's an atheist. There's a lot of people like that in blue states. However, now I don't want to say a lot. I don't know that. But you could have a secular humanist. Let me phrase it that way.
Go ahead.
Who's a Democrat, a voting Democrat. They have kids. They have kids. And frankly, one can make an argument. Do they love their kids because they don't guide them to God? I'm not going there. I'm just talking purely on the surface. They take care of their kids.
Sure.
They put clothes on their back. They put them in a nice home. They provide food for them. They love them. You are going to turn those people away. And now I saw this on election day. They double down and they're talking about vaccinating kids over 5. The likelihood of them getting COVID is next to nil.
Right.
And this is what's going to happen. And that I saw it on Twitter. Matt Walsh said the same thing. That's a loser. That is a loser.
That's a big loser.
That's an apolitical. I'm not even being political.
Right.
I'm just observing. And that is a loser.
Joe, just to be clear, all you're doing this way before, like when we broadcast this, after it's aired on the Crusade channel, remember something, okay? No, we're not talking about the vaccine per se, okay? As a political issue, vaccinating 5-year-olds is I mean, Joe, I'll be honest with you. I've always tried to figure out when it comes to the left what their game is. Okay. They know it's a loser, and I don't know what their game is. Unless there's something so nefarious going on that we really are not seeing it. Why would you jump on this loser of an issue? Why would you do it? And I haven't figured it out. I haven't.
No,
I don't know why they back down from this. It makes no sense. Even politically, it makes no sense.
Well, they're lost in their ideology. And it's the same thing with like third trimester abortions. It's the same thing, to be honest with you. What happened in Virginia, transgenderism with kids. People's kids, that's a sacred cow, Joe. It transcends politics. That makes people go crazy. People will go to jail for their kids. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're not going to, like, they should know that, but they don't. They overplay it. And frankly, I'm going to be honest with you. You talk about what happened in New Jersey. I'm going to focus solely on Sweeney. People who are not in New Jersey, a lot of people listen to us around the country. Frankly, to be honest with you, we have a lot of international listeners as well. Sweeney was Chris Christie's biggest nemesis, politically speaking. He was the Senate Majority Leader. Murphy usurped him. He should have became the governor of New Jersey. The Democratic machine, Murphy's a carpetbagger. He's from Massachusetts, Harvard graduate, Goldman Sachs executive. The Democratic Party picked him up and dropped him in New Jersey. Sweeney should have been the governor. Like, if things were fair and equal.
Right, the normal course of events.
And as Joe said rightly, he is arguably the most if I had to pick 10 people in the state of New Jersey, politically speaking, from a power perspective, one of the most powerful people in New Jersey, a truck driver who went door to door door to door. Do you know this, Joe? My wife told me this today, that the truck driver who beat him, challenged him to a debate. Sweeney laughed at him and said, I'm not doing it. And then he lost.
Right.
That, if I'm in the Democratic Party and that happens, if you're not taking an honest look in a blue state, he should have gotten crushed. If you don't take an honest look, this is 1 year in, Joe. They got 3 more years to F this up, and they're going to, because their policies stink. Forget about all the other crap. Their policies stink.
Right.
If you don't look at that and say to yourself, oh my goodness, we're in trouble. First of all, Jack Ciccarelli is a nobody. Murphy should have crushed him too in this state. And again, speaking purely objectively, crushed him.
Right.
That says a lot. And I'm going to tell you this. This is 1 year in. And this is the sad reality. This is all the stuff we talked about. No one listens. I feel like I'm talking to my kids sometimes. Joe Biden isn't a centralist. For crying out loud, he's a puppet. People can't get that through their head. They're seeing it now as if like that wasn't real before the election. Just because you hated Donald Trump,
Right. And what did they think he was? What did they think he was when he was hiding in his basement?
Oh my
Like, what did they think he was if he wasn't a puppet? Listen, Barack Obama is the president of the United States. Okay, I'm not saying anything about the election. I'm talking about the reality of the situation. Barack Obama and his people are running this White House. This guy's Joe, he doesn't even rise to the level of a joke. In other words, like he doesn't even rise to the level of being a bad president. He's just he's nothing. He is Joe. He is the textbook definition of an empty suit.
Well, he's a puppet. And like I said, it's showing itself. I looked today before the show. USA Today has him at 38% approval.
Right.
That means you lost. Forget about like you know, in terms of like a fair shake here. Let's just talk about you lost all your moderates. You've even lost Democrats at 38% approval. You're getting your butt kicked.
Well, Joe, let me, if I may, let's tie this back into Paul VI for a second. And the reason why I say that is this, is that he talks about, you know, what we need to do, particularly as Catholics, okay? And I know we're talking a little bit more politically tonight, but the idea is that in temporal affairs, what we talk about all the time, your day-to-day life, your temporal affairs are like you said earlier about a parent who puts together the cereal for their kid before they go to school and dresses their kid, then gets up and goes to work and tries to sanctify the public square through a good example. Okay, doesn't mean you have to preach all day long, all right, no. But you have to live a good example. Okay, that's the way we go about doing that. And yes, the politics come into it, but why are we talking about this tonight? Because Rachel Bovard in the Federalist, and she made a point that, Joe, I mean, there's a lot of people been saying this for a very long time. I think it's coming to a head now. Stop thinking. Look, stop taking Democrat talking points and making them Republican talking points. Like what's his name during the Clinton years? It's the economy, stupid. Right? Who said that? Carville. Okay, that's not true. It's important. And if you have a disaster of an economy, you're going to get the blame for it. But that's not the only thing. And I would argue it's not the primary thing that people vote for. Yes, we want a good and stable economy. Yes, we want good wages. Yes, we want lower taxes. But this is what Rachel Bovard says. She said conservatism. Now, she was quoting Russell Kirk, okay, who's considered to be the father of conservatism in America. Conservatism is not a set of legislative goals, like lowering taxes, school choice, or even border security. It's a set of principles, okay, or goods, the permanent things. Now, what do we talk about on the show? What are they talking about? Permanent things: family, opportunity, order, faith, freedom. Joe, a lot of times nobody cares what you have to say about the capital gains tax when all of those things are under assault. And I think that's the lesson that conservatives have to get through their head. What do you think?
Well, I think they've crossed some lines, and the lines are becoming very clear. To be truthful with you, I don't know how they can sell Joe Biden as a moderate anymore, because the people that he nominated to positions, as well as the positions that he's taken themselves, attack many of those basically, permanent things that Russell Kirk calls. particularly family,
Family.
particularly in the public school.
Would you
That
agree
is a
that
big
this last
issue.
election, would you agree that this election last Tuesday, I think it's primarily family.
Oh, without a doubt.
This is about this. Remember something, Joe. One of the people that was heading up, particularly her face was all over Fox News. I forgot her name. She's the mama bear. She wears a shirt. She says, "I'm going to protect my cubs." She is a self-identified liberal Democrat feminist who supported pro-life, okay, pro-life Glenn Youngkin, okay. It shows you could be pro-life and make your positions known, and people who disagree with you, like this liberal Democrat feminist, will still vote for you because why? What's the overlap? Because you're attacking her family now. You're attacking the stability of her family, and guess what? She don't want it.
No, but well, that's you see, this is the deal. I mean, they're outed. The public education system got outed. They got outed because of COVID. People were basically having to get more involved in their kids' education because they were having to homeschool them because the schools were closed. And also with this transgender bathroom situation. And this is not just, people would always ignore the public school education's failure when it happens in, the inner cities like Baltimore, Newark, Patterson. They don't care. New Orleans, who cares? It's them. It's those kids. Well, now it's your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids are now on the front line in plain English, and it's all over America. And people are not going to stand for it. I'm going to tell you this right now. This is going to cause, if they don't figure this out, the public school, listen, Joe, do you know how much money we pay in taxes to fuel a system that you have no say in?
Right.
No say. They create this school board, whatever. It's
Right.
all frigging a rubber stamp of the teachers union, which is the biggest union in the United States, and they dictate. You're paying all of this money. Tons and tons. I don't even want to tell you what property taxes, for the people who are listening to us in New Jersey. I'm going to tell you right now. You live in some of these towns, you could pay upwards. You think I'm lying. $30,000 a year.
Right.
$40,000 a year. I'm not lying.
And that doesn't mean your house. And that doesn't mean your house is worth $1 million either.
That's right. You go to some of these towns, look it up. Go, out west, Hunterdon County. Like you go up to northern Bergen County, you're paying. Forget it.
Well, we were in Hohokus over the weekend. We did a rosary.
It's one of the richest towns in New Jersey.
One of the richest towns. The houses look very modest. Guaranteed, they're paying upwards of 20
Joe,
grand
they're paying
or more.
The low end. You're paying in your $20,000 a year. That's a low end house in Hohokus.
Right, but
a year.
Right. And getting back to what we were saying, but that's what people are rebelling against. I think that's what people saw when they saw those parents in Loudoun County in particular and in other places. When the governor of that state says you really don't have any say in your kids' education, and they look at their tax bill, they're kind of like, first of all, you're wrong. You all work for us, every one of you. Okay. Don't tell me I don't have a say in what goes on. And then now you've got me angry. I'm going to go look at my tax bill. Okay. Are you kidding? And that's what that rebellion was about. That's exactly what that was. Okay. This is a purplish leaning blue state. Okay. That the three most important, the three elections on election night were all swept. The three most important offices in Virginia: governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. Okay. And Winsome Sears, MSNBC is already calling her a white supremacist. Okay. Leaving that aside.
I don't even understand that. That is like, I'll be true with you. You want to talk about defying. You know what they should just say? You know what it is, Joe? They should just say she's just not the right type of black woman. Because she's a black woman, and she's first generation American. Her father came here from Jamaica. I read with a $1.75 in his pocket. She is, to be honest with you, she lived the American dream. She struggled to get through college. She served in the military, and now she's a lieutenant governor of a huge state, a powerful state in America. Right. She lived the American dream. This is a person you revere. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what color she is, you revere her. Do you know how hard a road that is?
Yeah.
to become the lieutenant governor of Virginia when your father landed in America with $1.75 in his pocket? Do you know what type of character you have to have? Work ethic, discipline?
Hmm.
Like, it's mind-boggling what she achieved. And
Right.
you're going to criticize her and call her a white supremacist? You see, that's where she has to sue them. You see, that's where the standard of libel and slander is off. You sue the living daylights out of
Right.
somebody who
If you
calls you
call,
that.
if you're on CNBC or excuse me, CNN or MSNBC, and you accuse somebody of being a white supremacist, okay, and you do it with impunity, you do it um without any any hold, you don't hold back at all. You need to be held accountable. You need to be
Oh,
sued.
no doubt.
All right. In other
No
words, because
doubt.
you're calling a black woman a white supremacist, which I'm sure is just their way of calling black men who are conservative Uncle Toms, and the way they call black women who are conservatives Aunt Jemimas. I'm sure that's exactly what they're all about. They just don't want to use those terms anymore. So now, if you're conservative, I mean, we've all known, Joe, that if you're conservative, you're racist, right? Anybody break that to you? They've been telling us that since Reagan. Okay. In other words, if you're against welfare as a way of life, you're a racist. If you're for strong borders, you're a racist. There's nothing you could be. If you're for lower taxes, you're a racist. Don't ask me how that works out. Black people would pay less taxes too. But everything you do is a racist. I think it's just done now. I think people really are starting to listen to people like us and saying, you know what? I'm not going to let that racist tag bother me anymore. I know who I am. I know who I am in God's eyes. Okay. And I'm going to fight against them, because I'm not fighting against black Democrats. I'm not fighting against gay Democrats. I'm fighting against Marxists. That's what we're fighting against. We're fighting against Marxists. We know exactly what they're about. But let's get back, Joe, real quick. You're at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. We would ask you to please become a premium member of the Crusade Channel. You could go on the website, listen for free, check it out, kick the tires. We know you're going to love King Dude Barrett and everybody else at the Crusade Channel. So crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. I think Rachel Bovard offers some pretty good solutions as far as what conservatives are supposed to do. Okay.
Well,
Because Joe, the mistake is going to be, and I'm going to hand it over to you. The mistake is going to be that we're just going to vote the same type of idiots into office, and we cannot afford to do that. They need to have different priorities and a different focus. What are some of those, Joe?
well, I mean, obviously there's, the low-hanging fruit. Big tech corporations have to get broken up. There's no question about that. There has to be competition there. You can't have these monopolies like Facebook and Twitter. Look what they did. Whether you like Donald Trump or not, look what they did. That's unprecedented in America. Obviously, we could talk about things like having responsible immigration reform. That's up to prudential judgment. We could talk a little bit about that. She talks about that in her article. Obviously, there has to be an end of abortion. These are all low-hanging fruits. I want to focus in on prioritizing the American family.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I think that's a winner again. And why do I say that? Because the bathroom incident in Virginia was a loser for the that's why they lost, Joe. That happened right before the election. I got news for you. If that didn't happen, the Democrats would have won in Virginia. That's
I'm gonna say maybe there has been a lot of buzz over the last several months in Loudoun County, so there was a groundswell. I would say that was kind of the icing on the cake. I still think McAuliffe would have lost because he stepped. Remember, Joe, these are the smartest people in the room, and he wasn't smart enough to know you can't tell parents that they have no say in their kids' education. But go ahead, Joe.
But just to throw some facts at people, 40% of American children are born out of wedlock. 70% of them are black children. Everyone knows that integrational damage this has done to families and neighborhoods, to moms and their kids, especially young black men. When a father is not in the home, this is, again, not dogma. This is sociology. Look it up. Look to see how those kids do in school as far as grades. Look to see the percentage of those kids who go to jail. Like, this is factual. It's factual. The family is so fractured in America. It is so fractured. One of the reasons we don't even know what marriage is anymore. in this country. People don't even
Right.
know what marriage is anymore. Marriage is something that they see on television. They think that that's marriage. But at the end of the day, we have to, as conservatives, if you ask me, obviously we could listen, we could talk about the low-hanging fruit, getting out of, the WTO, the World Health Organization, focusing in on bilateral trade agreements, all important things. Absolutely. We have to get back to basics, to be honest with you. America has to get back to basics. We've forgotten basic things. The family is a basic cell of every society. And frankly, the American family is a wreck. It is a wreck.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, when are we going to start? Remember, we talk on the show all the time about we have to go on the offense. Okay, we spoke to our friend Tim Gordon a couple of times about the need to go on offense. King Dude's always talking about going on offense. Okay, when are we going to launch an offensive against this idea? And then this is going to cheese off conservatives. Okay, the American nation, our nation is not built on the individual. And if you think that, you are wrong. Our nation is built on families. That's what a good nation is
But
built
every
on.
nation is built on a family. Like, no matter where you are in the world, you could be in the jungles of Brazil or you could be in Paris. Everyone comes from a family. A family forms you. It forms your virtues. It forms everything about you.
Yeah, but
And
Joe, and the problem is in under Americanism. And listen, we get it from the left, we get it from the right. In other words, individual rights, individual liberties, which of course are important. But I think that you know how like in the church, there's a preferential option for the poor. Okay. In other words, in other words, when in doubt, feed the poor. Okay. Because that we have to think that way. All right. It's one of our commands. In America, it should be the same thing. The default position when it comes to policy in America, if it doesn't help the family, and in fact, if it hurts the family, it shouldn't be enacted into law. The family should be what is protected at all times. Yes, individual rights that individuals enjoy within society. I'm not looking to take away anybody's rights, but the priority needs to be family, strengthening wages, all the things that you mentioned. But that's got to be our focus. That's got to be our focus. Why, Joe? Why? I would say it like this, and I'm going to hand it back over to you. When you look at, and again, this goes back a very long time, okay? When you look at the stated goals, this is not Joe Pasillo making it up, okay? When you look at the stated goals of the Marxists over the last 100 years, we talked about Gramsci. You could talk about so many others. Joe, the goal is to take out the church and the family. Let's stay with the family. Why? Why take out the family? Families, because big families in particular, okay, tend to be more successful. When those families gain some sort of prosperity and wealth, they become independent. Not that they ever were to begin with, but let's just say you are strong and you are independent of government power. The left cannot have that. And oligarchs on the right can't either, by the way. Okay, so we'll leave them aside for a second. That's why the family has been under constant assault since the time we were kids. It goes back to contraception, Joe. It goes back to abortion, no fault divorce, all of it. If you want to control society, you have to take out families, meaning you have to take out the middle class. That's the way you're going to gain control over society, because you're going to have the elites on one side, and then you're going to have the poor on the other who are dependent on you. And you take out an entire group of people. Joe, this is not new. This goes back to the French Revolution. But that's why we have to make our priority unapologetically. No, if it hurts families, we're against it.
well, I think it's organic that these decisions have hurt families, because when you take God out of the family, I'll be honest with you, things don't work out. That's why marriage is a sacrament. Christ knows everything. He knows that marriage is difficult. He knows that having a family isn't easy. If it was easy, everyone would be successful at it. And frankly, most people aren't. Why? What is the missing factor? God. And we've removed him from our society. And that's why families are falling apart. When you take your marriage in the eyes of a sacrament, through the lens of a sacrament, maybe it's better phrased that way. You take your vow seriously. You know that you're married forever. Forever. There's no divorce. You could have a divorce. You're still married. in the eyes of God. When you stand before God, this is okay, that's your mindset. Let's talk about the graces that keep you married. You're more considerate, you're less selfish. Like you're devoted. Like all of these things make for a successful marriage. All of these things are part of having a sacramental marriage. Well, that doesn't mean anything anymore. That simply doesn't mean anything anymore. And
Mhm.
frankly, when you don't have that, you're in trouble. You're
No,
simply in trouble.
no, I agree. And there's a few other. I mean, that should obviously be our focus. Let's also talk about something that happened, or what we think Tuesday night was an example of, something we've talked about before. The good old fashioned principle of subsidiarity. Okay, the people within the states held elections, when they organized, went out, voted. They threw out the bums, if you want to put it like that. If you want to talk about, let's say, Terry McAuliffe, okay, who's a bum, and a guy like Sweeney. And I hope this truck driver hangs on in New Jersey and sticks to his guns. Okay, they threw out the bums, but what is it about, Joe? These are local elections. All right, these are local elections. Yet CNN and MSNBC and the mainstream media and Joe Biden and members of the House, they have to be looking at that. They have to be looking at that, and I think it's a very good example of what we've spoken about before on the show, that yes, you can make a national difference if you work within your own sphere of influence. Now, in this case, you're talking about particularly the state of Virginia and the state of New Jersey. But it shows what you could do when you start to, when you start to kick the rat's nest a little bit. Okay. When you start to get the rats all stirring, they think they're resting comfortably, all right, in their little nest. But then somebody comes and kicks it, okay, on the state and local level, and now they're all running around not knowing what to do. I think it's a great example of what we're doing. I'm going to give people another one, and I'm not blowing smoke. Joe Rossinello, he went up in front of his town, okay, to ask a very simple thing. This is another example that many of you out there at the Crusade channel, because we haven't really talked about it, maybe you don't know about, okay? Joe went, he questioned the Human Rights Commission of the city of Rutherford, New Jersey. And he said, well, why did you allow a rainbow flag during Pride Month, but we wanted to put up a life, what was it, Joe, a pro-life flag?
Yeah, it's choose life.
Choose life flag. And the city said no. Now, people might say, well, that's not a big deal. Yes, it is a big deal. See, the more we say that these smaller fights are not a big deal, the more we lose. That's the whole point of our conversation tonight, or one of the main points, is we need to start acting on a local level. Now, we'll see what comes from that, and Joe's already been to the press. Well, Joe, give people an update on that. What's going
Well, no,
on
well,
with as far as—
basically, like if you're going to allow individual flags, it has to be open to all issues, and they're basically cherry picking. So we basically made a presentation, to the town, and we also made a presentation. They have a civil rights organization. We made a presentation there, and then frankly, they denied us. So then I went to the press, and I've been back and forth with a reporter. Hopefully, they run a story on it. At the end of the day, you got to speak up, and that's exactly what Paul VI is saying. You see, that's what Catholics are. We're supposed to be salt and light in society. We're supposed to be representatives of Christ. That's what a disciple is. You're supposed to show people, like to God, but based upon your life. Forget about what you say. That's important. What was our thumbnail last week? It was basically like, let your words teach, but your actions speak. You see, that's what we are supposed to do. Everyone who's Catholic, everyone who's Catholic, you've been given everything. We don't use it. We simply don't use it. We sit on our
Right.
hands. We don't do anything. We don't do anything.
Right.
And you know something? God is going to call us on it in
Joe,
plain English.
I think that we are here, you and I, we're here to emphasize this. But yes, not only, we want to emphasize that to people, not only our Catholic brothers and sisters. First of all, if Catholics in America started acting like Catholics, all 80 so million of them, okay, this country would go on a much different path.
Oh, Joe, the whole
Okay.
country changes
The
tomorrow.
whole country would change. Just think about if every Roman Catholic in America was pro-life. Abortion would end tomorrow.
Joe, I'll
if
give you
every
three
Roman
things.
Catholic acted as a Roman Catholic and listened to the church on abortion and voted that way, abortion in America would be over tomorrow.
Joe, I'll change the country today. if we did three things. We went to confession once a month, we prayed the rosary every day, and we went to church once a week. If every American Catholic did what I just said, three things that take no time. It takes 20 minutes a day to pray the rosary. It takes 10 minutes to go to confession on a Saturday once a month. And it takes 45 minutes to go to mass with your family. If every Catholic in America did those three things, the country changes tomorrow. It
Right.
changes tomorrow. And then
Well,
we
I
wonder why everything's a mess. You don't have to read encyclicals and read esoteric books and know the ins and outs of everything. You do those three things in any church that's authentically Catholic, i.e., the priest is ordained, you will change your community. You'll change your family, and most importantly, you'll change yourself. But we
and
don't
and,
do jack.
And let's get it straight too. When people say, "Oh, that's so very Catholic," why? The Orthodox Jews agree with us on these issues. The evangelicals agree with us on these issues. In other words, what do you have to fear if, let's say, for argument's sake, it was a Catholic governor? I don't know what Youngkin is. I didn't look into it. I'm assuming he's Protestant of some kind, but nonetheless. But if you had a Catholic governor who, let's say, was pro-life against gay marriage and the whole nine yards, what do you have to fear if you're an Orthodox Jew? Nothing. In fact, the Orthodox Jews, they're the one, they voted for Chitterelli in New Jersey. Joe, those Jews in Passaic, what do you think, they voted for Murphy?
Oh, no way.
The Orthodox down in Lakewood, you think they voted for Murphy? They
No
voted for
way.
Chitterelli. Okay. And it's the same thing, let's say, with evangelicals. Why would an evangelical, how can an evangelical vote for Phil Murphy or Joe Biden? Okay. And the fact is they don't. I mean, it's a disgrace to Catholics that half the Catholics in America can't recognize evil, whereas 80% of the evangelicals do. In other
Well,
words,
people
especially when
haven't,
it
I
comes to
mean,
abortion and things like that.
people haven't met Christ, Joe. We talked about that with Jose Gonzalez, who does a teaching apostolate with Sophia Press, basically, this past weekend. People, listen, just like in the gospel, when the Magi encountered the child, as in the Christ child, Christmas is coming, people. We're going to be in Advent very soon. They changed. They went home another way. It's people, their lives aren't animated by their faith, and it shows, Joe. You see, I'm a big like look at the fruit. I say it all the time. It shows. It shows people who their lives are animated by God. I'm going to tell you right now, they're joyful, they're happy, and not necessarily successful from a money perspective. They're successful. Their
Joe,
marriages, they have long marriages, they have good lives.
let me stop you there for a second. And I know what you're going to say, but I want to make a point, especially to our audience on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Don't those people deserve good leadership, both in the church and in the secular world? Don't they deserve a church that takes their back? Unfortunately, and we're not church bashing here, but let's face it, a lot of the times the church just quite frankly is not on our side. Okay. We have a concern. That's why we're talking tonight about conservatism. And we're going to get into it a little bit more because we have some time. All right. Where conservative leaders should be taking care of people that you just described. We have no leadership, Joe. Okay. Or we have leadership, but the voices in our leadership that actually care about the things that we think. Okay. They're disparate voices. They're all in different places rather than unified. We don't have a unified conservative movement politically and culturally. And we don't have a unified church leadership. And you know how I could back that up, by the way? So this way, everybody, before anybody jumps down our throat, thinks that we're bashing the church. 1/3 of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops said abortion is not the primary issue. Okay? That's all you need to know, that no, we're not unified as Catholics in America. Our leadership is not unified. And my point to you, Joe, is, isn't it a disgrace that a couple of jamokes like us, okay? I like doing this. I like talking, Joe, but I'm just saying, just purely from a time point of view, a responsibility point of view, that we have to be the ones that go out there and talk about this because our leadership lets us down all the time, when we deserve to have good leaders because we're loyal to them.
Well, the disunity in the American Catholic Church is a disgrace. God will deal with that. I'll be honest with you. I used to get nuts about it. Nuts, crazy nuts. I focus on, to be honest with you, what I can do. And what I can do is I could be faithful. I don't support things that are not faithful with my
Mhm.
time, my talent, or my treasure. Period. End of story. I will not go to a parish that is not authentically Catholic. I will not financially support prelates that are not doing what they're supposed to do as it's written. You see, this is the thing. It's as it's written. I don't make it up. The rules apply to me as much as they apply to you as a married man, as a person in the business world, as a father. They apply to you too as a prelate. Again, I know what I have to do. I know what I can do. I could strive to be holy. And that's what I do. And everyone else can do that. You
Right.
see, we have to do what we can do. I can't control other people. I can control me. And what I'm trying to do is try to live a life that guides me to heaven, guides my family to heaven. But in the process of being sanctified, you will sanctify society. That is a fact. And to be honest with you, that's what I focus on. All the other stuff I can't control. It's sad. There's no question about it. I have eyes, just like everyone else does. But I think we as Catholics have to understand that we have all the tools necessary to make a difference. Are we using them?
Well, that is why I brought up your little venture into local politics. Okay, with your challenging the whatever human rights organization of that town. Okay, that's why we're bringing up Virginia. That's why we're bringing up New Jersey. Because those are people, Joe. I think what you're describing is the 1-2 punch. Okay, and the 1-2 punch is that okay, we are to one degree or another, we're leaderless in the church right now. We can't look to our leaders in the church, not as a whole group. There are very good prelates, okay, but we can't. So what we do is, as you said, let's make sure we're staying personally holy. Let's stay close to the sacraments. Let's stay in God's grace. Then that's one punch, okay, and then the next punch is get out there into the public square with that grace, okay, and get out there and boldly speak the truth as we've been saying. And that's why I think it's important what these people did last week. Again, I guarantee you, not all of them are Catholic. I bet you a lot of them are, okay? Not all of them are Catholic. But what did those people do? They got into the public square, just like the father did, whose daughter was raped. Now that's exceptional because he's got a hell of a right to be really, really angry. Okay. He went and got arrested. And then other people went, black people, Joe, black Virginians went up in front of the school boards. Okay. They knew they were going to be mocked by the likes of Joy Reid and Ibram Kendi and people like that. It's not easy to get mocked by your own people. Okay. It really isn't. There's a lot of Catholics that probably would mock us. All right. I wouldn't want that. These women and men got up there in front of the school board to challenge all this stuff. This is what we need in the public square. Now, I just want to bring it back, Joe, for a second from Catholicism, just for a second into the political realm. This is one thing we have to get away from. And I'm not going to lie. When I first read this years ago, when I first became politically aware that the mission statement of the National Review was to stand athwart history yelling stop. And I didn't question that for a long time. All right. And recently, in the recent couple of years, I have, and Rachel Bovard puts it very, very well in this article. She says, listen, to truly, she says this is quote, these fights won't be easy. To truly engage them requires some relinquishing of Bill Buckley's old adage that conservatives must, quote, stand athwart history yelling stop. As David Marcus says, a movement dedicated to simply digging trenches is no longer adequate, and it is no longer acceptable. And I think that's the thing, because no, I don't want to yell stop at the left and then just say, all right, now we'll just incrementally push you back. Joe, I don't want to hit them at the line of scrimmage and tackle them at the line of scrimmage. I want to hit them at the line of scrimmage and I want to drive them back 25 yards. That's what see, that's where we fail, Joe. Why would you take the grace of God, especially as Catholics, that you receive in the sacraments, go out into the public square just to tackle the opponent at the line of scrimmage. That's not. We have to roll this back. It's too far gone. What say you?
Well, I'll tell you what, we talked about this on Friday when we were kind of preparing the show, because people aren't willing to get out of the boat and take a chance. Joe, people are too comfortable. People are too comfortable.
Well,
You
would you
see,
agree, Joe? Would you agree? I'm sorry to cut you off, but I do want to ask you a question. Would you agree that this seemingly last Tuesday, some people are not that comfortable and they're willing to get out there in the trenches?
but what are they going to do? Like you say, once they get control, you
That
see
remains to be
that's the
seen.
question. I mean, people like to be invited to the barbecue, Joe. People don't like to make waves. That's in the church and outside of the church. Christ made waves. Christ made waves. Christ was the greatest revolutionary that ever walked the face of the earth, ever. We don't want to make waves. People go along to get along. And that's why we don't do anything. People don't want to be looked at like you're a weirdo.
I
Like
think I think, Joe, I think that might be starting to change. I know
I
what you're
hope
saying. And,
we'll
and on a
see.
larger scale, I think you're right. In fact, I don't think you're right. I know you're right. Okay. On a larger scale, we have a long way to go. But let me, just for informational purposes, Joe, if you don't mind, I just want to tick a couple things off to our audience at the Crusade Channel and all those listening to us. We mentioned the truck driver. Okay. He spent $153. Okay. And basically, at this point, the Associated Press, as of us speaking right now, the Associated Press has declared that race for him. Okay. So he beat Sweeney. Republicans in Long Island are sweeping the victory, leading all major races. In San Antonio, Republicans won a Texas House seat in a largely Hispanic district that Biden won by 14 points. This is one that struck me, Joe. In Massachusetts, a teacher forced to resign because he attended the Trump rally at the Capitol on January 6th was elected to the school board. Let me stop there. There are other examples, but let me stop there, Joe. That guy got out of the boat. That guy lost his job, and that guy's now sitting on the school board. See, I would try to emphasize that if we get out of the boat and we trust God a little bit more, in fact, a lot more, if you ask me, okay? If we trust God, there's nothing to fear. There absolutely is nothing to fear. In other words, it might get a little bumpy. The road could get bumpy. We know that. It's not going to be easy. We're dealing with vicious people. Okay. Vicious people. So, nobody ever says it's going to be easy. But I bring that guy up because, Joe, I'm going to read that one more time. He lost his job because he attended a Trump rally. He's now on the school board. He's now on the school board. He ran and was on the school. Now, to me, that says getting out of the boat is risky, but the fruit from that could be very, very good, not just for you individually, but also for society in general. What do you think?
Well, there's no question about that. But again, that also implies that people know who God is, that they're praying, and that they're living in the state of grace. And Joe, honestly, I mean, look at the numbers. I mean, most Catholics don't go to mass, which means they're not in a state of grace. It's a mortal sin if you miss mass on Sunday. That's not my rule. That's just what it is. Most
Right.
Catholics don't go to mass. If you're not going to confession at the minimum once a year, you're not considered a practicing Catholic. How many people go to confession? You
Right.
see, we are not using what God gave us. And that's why I said we'll change the world doing three things that take no time and they cost nothing, but people aren't even willing to do that because we're too comfortable. You see, America is where it's at now because we are living off the fat of our fathers and grandfathers who had to struggle, who knew what struggle was. We don't. And we're living off of it. And frankly, we're spoiled rotten and we're not willing to basically do anything. We won't give up anything and we won't do anything until we're smacked in the face. We're kind of been smacked in the face to a degree in the last, say, year, but this is still nothing. I mean, I actually think, to be truthful with you, when the economy goes bust, and it's going to because the debt is getting ridiculous, it's not going to even matter who the president is.
Right.
That we're on the road to that in this country.
Right.
Wait till that happens. Now we're talking a different ball game. That could be decades. of
Well, let me tell
hardship.
you. Well, let me tell you something. I wish people would understand. Inflation just doesn't affect working class people and middle class people. If your money's getting eaten away, it's getting eaten away, whether you're rich or whether you're poor. Okay, and let's face it. You take a shave. If inflation gets out of control, and don't even think for a second that it can't. Okay, we have not Democrats. We have socialists in charge now. Okay, they don't care about inflation. But see, if you're a guy who says, "Well, I got my $5-6 million and I got my house and this and that," that house will go up in smoke like that. Okay, in terms of inflation and taxes and everything else. I mean, I wish people would listen. Why do you have to wait for something to happen before you react? You already see it happening. We've seen it happening for the last 50 years.
It's
I do
just
want to put a
human
finer.
nature.
I do
I
want to
agree
put.
with you, Joe. I mean, I
No,
agree
no.
with this and this has been going on our whole life too. I'm 51. I mean, it's been a slow decline. I mean, like it's been going on for decades. We're just starting to see a lot of bad fruit. I mean, there has been bad fruit for years and years and years. I mean, compared to like past generations. But it all ties again to the need for God. We're made for God. You take that out of the equation, the human being eats his own. You just self-destruct. You simply self-destruct. And that is where we're at.
Mhm.
Until we make that turn, and frankly, we're not going to make that turn until, if you ask me, everything's going to turn upside down. We're heading in that road. People don't listen. They simply don't. They self-destruct. And when they self-destruct, it's the story of the prodigal son. Eventually, the young man is eating the food of the pigs, and he turns around. And you know something, Joe? Sadly, there's some people, and there's a large percentage of people, they continue to eat the pig's food, and they know it's pig's food, and they stay there anyway. And
Well,
and
Joe,
and
those.
that's sad, but this is where we're at.
No, no, Joe. Listen, I know what you're saying 1,000%. Remember something: the prodigal son was having a grand old time there in that dark place. Okay, while he was burning through his old man's money. But yeah, so he had to get to the point. And let me tell you something: many people have gone through that. I'm not judging the prodigal son, but like you said, at one point in his destitution, he says, "I think I'm going to go back to my father's house." There's a lot of people stay there feeding those pigs. All right, they stay. They get used to the stench. And they get used to the smell. Okay, they get used to the terrible pig's food that they're eating, and they decide to stay there. And the problem is those people get destroyed, but they can destroy an entire nation. And that's why we're here, to help people to raise their consciousness to what's going on, to try to prevent some of this stuff. Again, we are not William F. Buckley standing athwart history yelling stop. We're saying, along with many other people like us on the Crusade Channel and elsewhere, we have to go on the offensive. Last Tuesday night, I think, was a good indicator. It's not, it's a little small skirmish in the grander culture war and political battle and spiritual battle that we're in. But nonetheless, it was victorious. It was successful. Joe,
It
final
was.
thoughts before we go.
I want to see what happens. I mean, let's see what happens next year. I mean, if you ask me, I think it's very clear that they're going to lose power. Because to be honest with you, it's nothing that the Republicans are doing or conservatives are doing. Their policies stink. Joe, they're self-destructing. They're
Well,
self-destructing.
I
But
think
I
that's what
want to
Rachel
see what
Boulevard was
people
kind of
do.
pointing out. I think that's
What
what
do
she was.
people do? Like, again, people have to start waking up. Look around you. And I say this all the time. Is it working? Is this model working in your life, in the lives of your neighbors, look around. And when you come to the conclusion, which is obvious, you have to turn around.
Right.
And in turning around, you should turn to God. And I got news for you. If America did that, we change tomorrow.
Well, let's pray,
Everything
Joe, that's the way.
changes tomorrow.
We have to leave it there, Joe. Remember something. C.S. Lewis said, the one who turns back first and goes back to the place you started is the most progressive. Okay. Because going down that same path and continuing down that path, you're only falling deeper and deeper. I think it's an important conversation. I think we have to rethink not only what we do in our own lives, Joe Rossinello. I think we have to rethink our politics in America. It's got to suit us more. not just us. Again, I would say also those who agree with us, particularly on what we know are the fundamental issues. The moral issues are the fundamental issues more than anything else. There are many people of goodwill out there that we have overlap with that would join us in this fight. We need to be proactive, as you always say, Joe Rossinello. We need to make ourselves a little uncomfortable. We need to start sacrificing more. We need to start praying and fasting more. And we need to get more politically active. Take our Catholic faith into the public square. Run for the school board. Go knock on doors. Go do what they do. Believe me when I tell you, you'll be sitting on that school board in the next election because most of these school boards, Joe, nobody goes out to vote for them. All right. But I'm just using that as an example. Start becoming active. Active. That's what we have to be. That's the way we can win the culture war. That's the way we win the spiritual battle. And dare I say, that's the way we're ultimately going to help our nation and help to save our nation from this godforsaken regime that's sitting in Washington right now. Joe Rossinello, great conversation as always. All right. And yeah, so we got a lot of good things going on. Remember to on Veritas Catholic Radio Network, you could download the app so you could hear our Sunday afternoon interview shows that we have on there. We know you'll enjoy them. Please become a premium member of the Crusade channel. You could go on the website and listen for free and kick the tires. And we know that you're going to love it and want to become a premium member. Like, subscribe, and share, and do all that fun stuff wherever you find Joe and Joe, particularly on Frontline TV on YouTube. Frontline TV on YouTube. We would emphasize like the videos there and share them with your friends and subscribe. That would help us out a great deal. And once again, we want to thank you all for listening to us on the Crusade Channel, your home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, and the Kennedy Profession. From sun up to sundown, the Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing.